Hi friends, this is an inversion using a chair and it's affectionately called instant Maui because the effects speak for themselves, like being on holiday, or it's Ardha Viparita Karani, which means half legs up the wall or half legs on a chair. Now you could use a sofa or something similar. Obviously this is like a standard chair. The height of the chair will depend on what you're using underneath you, so I'll explain more as we go along. I'm going to bring in some extra props, but essentially if you were just using a lower seat, or if you had longer legs than me and a seat that's the same height, you might not put anything underneath you because I'm going to lie on my back and put my legs up here. So the invitation with all of these poses is to play around, get an idea, get a sense of the shape that I'm creating with my body. So watch it, see the shape that's being created, and then get experimental and play around with your own props, because you may not have all the fancy yoga props. So you can definitely adapt and adjust, all right? Now, because this is a hard seat, I've put some padding on it. So I've put a blanket. I've actually tucked it under at the end for a couple of reasons. It's going to give a bit of support underneath my ankles, but also the chair slightly slopes back and I really want my shins to be more horizontal. So again, think of these as principles and then experiment with what you have around the house. All right, so I'm going to bring things in and out, so bear with me. So the first one I'll do is, let's see, I'll use the bolster first. I really like this bolster, it's flatter. I also have round bolsters, and if you don't have a yoga bolster, I'll show you how you can use something else like a stack of blankets. Now, I would say it's important that whatever the chair you're using doesn't slip. So great if you've got a yoga mat that you can put it on. And otherwise maybe have your chair against the wall so it's not going to slip off. All right, now just before we start, lying on the back, putting the legs up, if you're completely flat on the floor, you may find that it's a bit easier to access, but again, it's going to depend how high your chair seat is. Once we start adding props underneath the body, we have to kind of just adjust a little bit to get it right. There are a few cautions. I would say don't do it if it feels uncomfortable. Trust yourself. If something doesn't feel good for you, don't do it. If you have any particular back pain, especially while you're doing this pose, you may want to leave it out, or I would suggest if you have any pain, you definitely leave it out. Certain spinal conditions like spondylolisthesis, spondylolisthesis, I always get those a little bit confused, but any spondy conditions, you're going to avoid this pose. And also if you're beyond the first part of your pregnancy, so I would say definitely not doing this pose after about 3 months, just to be sure. You may find that you don't want to do it at all during your pregnancy. And then kind of obvious things, once we start turning ourselves slightly upside down, so if you suffer from acid reflux, then it's probably going to exacerbate that. If you have any eye conditions, you probably want to avoid turning yourself slightly upside down. So use your sensible judgment. If you're not sure, seek medical advice. All right, that's kind of a big disclaimer on this video. The effects of being upside down, and especially when I'll show you we're going to elevate the heart slightly higher than the head, can really help to quieten the brain. Once we take the legs up, it's also very restorative and calming, and in large part we're sort of draining fluid away from the legs and easing tired muscles. And of course, because we're upright for much of our day, the heart has to work quite hard to get blood around the body and up. So any posture where you're lying down is going to lead you more into that relaxation state, and also it will possibly lower your blood pressure. So again, these things are to be experimented with. So to get into this, it's easier if you sit on the bolster and then swing the legs up. Now I'm going to move this a little bit back to start. And okay, so just ease yourself down nice and carefully. The backs of the knees want to come to meet the edge of the chair. Okay, and because my legs, shins are a bit longer, I can slide my toes underneath. Now, if you can see, what I'm doing here is just slightly having my tailbone off the bolster. And this creates a little bit of a back bend in the upper spine. The belly is more horizontal and flat. And this bolster is actually coming up to my lower ribs. And then I can take the arms out. So that feels pretty good. Oh, here's the dog. And you'll just play around. So just as an experiment, if this is right under my pelvis, it's okay, but I feel a lot of weight coming down onto my upper back, and I also feel like the upper back is kind of shrunken or sunken down. So I really like this position where the tailbone is just a little bit off. And I want you to notice from the knees to the hip creases, that's about a 45-degree angle. So I would say you definitely don't want to have your hips right underneath your knees. Yeah? So hopefully you can see the shape. I'll talk a bit more about the head in a moment, but just have a look at this shape. And as you can see me wiggling, you'll wiggle until you find like the right level of comfort. You'll just get to it and you'll be like, oh, that's it. Now to come out, I would say put your feet on the chair. You might be able to roll off to your side from here. Everything in and out of the pose is going to be slow. I'm going to wiggle, 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 and then roll off to the side and ease myself up. Okay, so what do you do if you haven't got a bolster? A stack of blankets. Now, I've folded them so they approximate the shape and size of the bolster. And now I'm going to try and remember where that was. Now, I've already tried this. These blankets are brilliant. They're cotton. They're very supportive. They're not too squashy. But I wanted to kind of take the edges off. So that bolster was so lovely and rounded. So if I put a fleece blanket on top, it just gives me that really lovely shape. Okay, so I'm going to try with that. Now, you also could have your eye pillow nearby. I'll show you the strap. I'll show you the sandbag. So various other accoutrements if you have them. And okay, so one step at a time. Let's play with that one. So again, sit on the bolster or bolster-like thing. Get your legs in position. Make your way back slowly. Now I can already feel that's too far forward and I'm going to need to come, I need the support this way, but it's pretty tricky because this isn't as manoeuvrable. So what I can probably do is come up and then just shift the chair a little bit. I think that's going to be easier to do. The detail is everything. Oh, I've probably gone too far now. Let's see how that is. Yeah, slightly too far. Okay, just a little bit. That feels better. Backs of the knees coming right in. Okay, so perhaps you can see my rib cage is lifting, so it's a bit like the 1 or 2 blanket back bend. My tummy feels quite flat, and that feels pretty nice. Basically, you can do all of these postures with a much, much lower prop or no prop whatsoever. I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, so now we're going to play around with the legs. So wiggling back, off to the side, and slowly up. You'll do it much more slowly after you've been resting for a while. So if you have a D-ring yoga belt, you can loop it. So you use the, there we go. Yeah, you use the D-ring, pop it around the edge of the chair, and it depends on the chair because you might not be able to do this depending on what your chair is like. I'm going to tighten it somewhat so that I can scooch my legs in there, and that's going to hold the legs in position, which sort of lends to the relaxation. It does look quite bizarre when we do all these intricate restorative poses, and it can feel like a lot of faff, but actually it does feel good once you do it. So ideally I want that strap coming right up so that it's just at the top of the legs, which means it's nearly off the seat. So if you've got someone who can help you, not, you know, if you haven't got a teacher to hand, enroll someone. Now I'm going to turn my toes slightly in, my heels slightly out, so the legs are more spiraling in, and then help myself back. Whew, that is really good. Okay, and then what you would do is, if it's a colder day, you'd have cover on your feet, you'd have socks on, you would have possibly a blanket to drape over you, and I'll show you another suggestion with a blanket in a moment, and you'd have your eye cover. So, like so. You can also lift the wrists, and I've taught you that one, so you can lift the wrists a little bit to bring the wrists into flexion. Okay, so to come out, can you slide your feet out, wiggle back, roll off to your side, and then come up. Okay, now final demo. So I'm disappearing out of view there. A blanket over the feet, that can be pulled down. If you are lucky enough to have a sandbag, these are great, but they are pretty heavy. So you could use another bolster or something similar. So once you've got the feet up, again, this is way more tricky to do. So I recommend using the strap, which is a bit easier, or you can actually put a blanket over. But it feels pretty good just to have that bit of weight coming down. So if you can see, I've got my feet right back, that little bit of support under the ankles. This is going to be really difficult to do on your own with a sandbag. So again, if you have a friend who can help you. This sandbag feels fairly evenly weighted, and it's below my knees, definitely below my knees. And then you can bring that over. Oh, and that's so nice. And then get yourself back. Just check in, little wiggle to get the pelvis in the right position. Any other adjustments, eye pillow on. And now notice my arms are quite far out. So you might have your hands here, here. Find the position where the shoulders can be easeful. Please don't put anything under your head. We do not want the head lifted. I will show you options for the head in a moment. Okay? So just bookmark this so you understand. Again, you can have a cover over the whole body, something under the wrists, cover over the eyes. Should be able to breathe well, and it should be relaxing. Okay, so this is a little more tricky, but I think I can wiggle my feet back and even bring this like this, and then take that heavy old sandbag off. So everything in stages. Wiggle, over to the side, and up we go. Okay, so if you are not using a lift underneath your pelvis, then you could use, so in fact I've shown you this on the other video where we did legs up the wall. We had a long blanket so that there was a bit of cover, a bit of softness under the head. So it might be that if your chair is low enough, you don't need to raise the hips, but I do like lifting the hips because we get that incredible relaxation response underway. So just to show you here, I actually don't know if this is going to work well for me. Legs back, whoops, and then
something. Can you say it again?
That's classic Alexa. Okay, here we go. That's pretty good. I don't like it as much, but it's pretty good. So I really like lifting the chest up and getting that little bit of a back bend. But what I'm doing here is I'm not lifting the head on its own. This support is coming all the way along the body. And essentially what you want to make sure of is that you have no hot spots, like no pressure points under the head if you're lying here for a long time. Okay, so to come out it's exactly the same thing. Feet on the chair, wiggle a bit this way, roll to your side, and ease yourself up. Okay. What to say? You could stay in this pose for as long as it feels comfortable for you. Set a timer if you have a bit longer. You can stay for 5, 10, 15 minutes, maybe 20 if it's working well. I think for this pose I would try and do 15. I think it's a pretty accessible pose. And yeah, for me, it's just an absolute go-to. If you're lifting the heart up a bit higher than the head, even if it's just a tiny bit, with that smaller prop under the back and the pelvis, you'll find that we get that deeper relaxation response, okay? So I hope that's helpful. Have a play. Again, all of these things are principles. Understand the shape, understand the intention, and then play around with what you have. So enjoy.